Quite understandable.
Move things around.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. How's it all going? How's your holiday? You all right?
Business with China. Yeah,
Oh, nice. How's China? Whereabouts were you?
was outstanding. We were in something called the Summer of Davos.
Okay.
So you know of Davos, the conference with the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Selected as technology pioneers at the World Economic Forum, and there's like the meeting where they announce all the new tech pioneers. That's in a city in China called Dalian.
Oh, amazing. What's the sort of blockchain scene like in China?
There's a big blockchain scene in China, but this one is like it's not about blockchain. This is like the world forum, like with world leaders and talking about.
Okay, so it covers a lot of different sort of technologies.
Kind of saving the world. You've probably seen it. Like the Davos is always it around generates always generates headlines. Like last year, Trump didn't come to Davos, and it was like this big thing.
Yeah. He does a lot of things. That's big.
Yes. Every time he opens his mouth is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Big dumb thing. So, what's our agenda? What are we talking about?
We just thought to kind of find out a bit about. Sorry, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. Definitely, I don't want to.
It's pronounced qedit.
Qedit, yes. I thought so. Good.
It's a little bit like Reddit.
Yeah. Qedit. That makes sense. That's what it looks like. But I was like, it's not good.
It's sort of fun.
Yeah, I saw it's based on a Latin name.
Exactly. Like you want to QED it, so you qedit.
Oh, interesting. So what was the? So it's just kind of to find out a bit more about qedit and what you're kind of up to, like because we had the zero knowledge proof workshop, so we had a lot of people in. Working on that, like kind of writing their own protocols, it's like, over the last kind of 6 months, I guess it seems to have exploded as an area of interest. I think.
Yes.
Well, I think that's fair. I mean, obviously it's been about for a while, and you've been about for a couple of years, but the last last 6 months, it seems to have really there's like a lot of events focused on it. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's time. So I'll tell you my angle on this. I come from the blockchain space originally. qedit is my third company in the space.
Okay. Oh wow.
The first company was Bits of Gold, which is in Israel the largest Bitcoin exchange.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
So in the space of blockchain, people have been looking at the fringe of cryptography for a very long time, and all these technologies like Zcash. You're familiar with Zcash?
Yeah.
This started somewhere in 2013 when people realized, Bitcoin is just a transparency machine, and that's not going to work for privacy. So can we keep this idea of no double spend and tokens moving around, but instead of sending transactions all over the network, can we do it with advanced cryptography and send proofs, like zero knowledge proofs? And the zero knowledge proof space was just becoming useful with this release of ZK Snark.
So what, in terms of how you've applied it, I guess it's come at the kind of it overlaps a lot with the influx of data regulations and things like that. Could you tell us a bit about how you pivoted, I guess, from an exchange into zero knowledge proof and a more enterprise level application?
Well, the idea is that the core technology is proof of hand, but and it solves a very deep problem. Competitors need to collaborate. And this is basically a repeating problem all over the industry, well before blockchain. It's just, industries that have many actors in them and cannot find a way, like tools to make their processes better, and they have to collaborate. To give an example, we've worked with a company in the diamond space. So, following a diamond around, and from the moment it's mined to formed and then put in polished and put in jewelry. There's so many actors involved, and there's competing actors all over the place. There's competing producers, competing transporters, polishing firms, and they all want to be able to make sure that the diamonds that they're holding are not fake. So they rely on these certificates and stuff like that. But their processes today are based on paper. The only form, the medium that they found to keep the data about this piece of rock is to add a piece of paper to it and transport it together. Yeah. So when blockchain arrived, they said, well, this could be a great way to have the entire ecosystem of diamond transportation digitalized and moving from paper to token representation. But the problem is that if you do token representation and everybody sees where that token is and who produced how many pieces and stuff, that's not really compatible with business.
Yeah.
So you have the idea of a network, you have the competitors on that network, and if you don't bring in privacy, you cannot really deploy your use case.
So how is it? So it's not just kind of the main companies that you're working with. Are a lot of them in the financial space, or a lot of them in the supply chain space, or is it starting to kind of? Because I guess every industry can use that. Something like, like marketing firms that share data, like everyone can use it. Are you seeing sort of industries that are more early adopters?
Well, those industries that have less regulation on the way that they deal with data are faster to adopt, and those where there's like bigger failures. Yeah. So supply chain is one. Financial sector has started looking at it very early. So there's already talks about cash or like tokens representing national currencies and central banks issuing those tokens. So there's already work in this direction, but and we also see a lot in insurance. So in places where you need to manage risk, but the way that you manage risk is processing very, very sensitive data. So those are the first that come to us looking for ways to make their processes better, but still respect privacy.
So I don't know how to phrase it. Does it come into conflict with existing regulations, something like zero knowledge proofs, which regulators maybe aren't knowledgeable enough about? How does it work?
But there's regulation that actually pushes for uses of zero knowledge. So in Europe the whole GDPR saga is such that it puts so much responsibility on holding private data and using it that you'd rather avoid having the data altogether. So if you can have, for example, an entire payment system where actually the transactions are not kept anywhere, it's just your transactions are kept with you. This allows for scaling up without having the burden of all this transactional data being shared in every node or managed by a central node.
Could you tell us a bit about how exactly like qedit works? I mean, maybe without the advanced maths, if possible.
Oh yeah, sure. So there's actually there's a story to explain what zero knowledge proof is, like how it works. This is how we explain it to bankers in a very simple way. So back in London, there was a sort of psychopath that was running the streets of London, and putting books of Where's Waldo that did not have Waldo on the book.
Really?
And so the kids started crying, looking for Waldo and not finding him, and got very distressed. So the librarians had a problem. The book was not selling enough because nobody would trust. The parents don't want their kids to end up crazy. So how can librarians prove to children that this is a legitimate book and not a psychopath book? So they pull the book from the shelf and they want to prove to the child that there's Waldo on the page, but they cannot point to Waldo on the page because that would ruin the fun. So what they need is a zero knowledge proof that Waldo's there, but without revealing the location. And so what the librarians did was take a very big envelope that's 4 times the size of the book, and drill a small hole in the middle of the envelope. And so because they know the position, they put the open book inside the envelope, just under the hole, so that you can see Waldo peeking, right under the hole. So the child can be convinced that there's Waldo on the page, but the envelope is blocking the context. You don't see where is Waldo. And when you shake the envelope and give it back to the child, they see an open book inside, but they don't know what's the XY of the solution. So these are 2 steps. This is all a zero knowledge proof protocol, and there's the exact equivalent in mathematics. You have showing without context, and then shaking. That's the information theory part, where you know for sure that proves it. And then the shaking is, okay, but how do I make sure that you cannot retrieve the private data? You can use the exact same protocol to prove that, for example, your transactions show that you own an asset and you didn't double spend it. You didn't spend it already.
That's ingenious. It's such a effective solution. So
that's what they use to drive back sales up. And that's what we use to drive qedit sales up. So we're taking a very advanced technology and we're bringing it for the enterprise world.
So is it kind of when you started because obviously you've worked in blockchain companies before, do you think it's a case of did you start with the problem? Or did you start with the problem and think, or were you kind of looking at it from the point of view as blockchain and zero knowledge proofs are a really effective tool? What kind of problems could they solve?
So I was, we set, just a second.
No.
We're actually, so that second company that was acquired by Digital Asset Holding, right about that time, you could already understand that if companies were, sorry.
You can answer it.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Do you want me to mute? Nice.
So can you repeat the question?
So you're talking about your second company.
You were talking about is it a solution looking for a problem?
Yes.
Yes. So basically, what we saw was that the blockchain itself could open, a realm of possibilities for companies to collaborate and banks to collaborate, etc. But they had this core problem at the heart of the solution. They were trying to bring transparency machines to ecosystems that fundamentally cannot be fully transparent. And that was before GDPR and privacy regulations. Once you add those regulations to the mix, we started asking, there's a guy called David Birch. He says that a lot. What's in the blocks? So if you start looking at what's in the blocks, you see all the private data of all the different participants. It doesn't fly. So the big problem was there's a lot of promise in blockchain in general and many different use cases that are being hyped up by the Deloitte of the world.
Yeah.
But then you were not going to be able to actually deploy them if you don't solve privacy. There's competing ways to solve privacy, right? So there's Intel SGX is a sort of closed or black box solution for solving privacy. But the problem is true, and you have to solve it to achieve blockchain in the enterprise world.
Yeah. What are the advantages over those privacy solutions?
Well, that's the point. Is that the solutions like Intel SGX are closed solutions, black box solutions, where basically you put your trust in this one American company, but you have no way of knowing what's exactly running on your chip, and it's ultimately a physical protection that you have. The chip doesn't let you read what it's doing, and by that, it's a promise to the others on the network that you didn't fake your calculation. But if you're able to, uncap the chip or do side channel attacks or find ways to manipulate what you're doing locally on your physical device, then you can convince others of things that are not real, that you did a transaction that didn't occur or stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely without meaning to, it's definitely one of the most elegant problems that I've seen blockchain solve, if you see what I mean. Do you think kind of the Deloitte and the kind of hype around it and some of the problems which you kind of look at and you go, I don't know why are you trying to even apply it there? Do you think they're harmful in terms of enterprise adoption, or do you think it's just they're getting filtered out?
No, but by now everybody has already been past the blockchain will do everything, and started being original, quote unquote, by saying don't use blockchain everywhere. It's not for everything.
Yeah.
So we will tell you where not to use it. But that wave has already passed as well. Yeah. Now it's okay. We've been at it for a few years. Where's the money? Where's the return on investment? Where are the blockchain projects that are being deployed? And there's beginning to be answers to that. Like there are projects that are being deployed, not as much as the hype, but you have networks that are beginning to be to actually run and bring value. So they stopped applying it everywhere and started focusing on things that can go beyond POC.
Yeah. And what's the? I was speaking to someone. Ariel Gabizon.
Yeah.
He was the way he views zero knowledge proofs. He views them as like solving a scalability issue.
Yeah.
As it's like, do you think there's like other application, like other benefits as well outside of kind of privacy in terms of?
Well, the two main topics that were discussed in ZCon 1 in Croatia a few weeks ago were scalability and I would say extensibility or like flexibility of zero knowledge. How can you prove more diverse things using zero knowledge proofs? And the other one was, how do you achieve scale using those tools? The scale part is more about verifiable computation than zero knowledge. You want to show that your blockchain correctly verified all the transactions, and it's a little bit like replacing the verification that a miner is doing by a zero knowledge proof. So you verified once, you prove that you verified all the details, and that proof is all that you need to communicate to the others. They can verify that this proof is valid, which means that the underlying transactions are all valid.
Okay. And are you seeing kind of more? Did you go to the ZCon?
Yeah, so it was outstanding. The Zcash community is just one of the best communities I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, they're amazing. I think we had the everyone left because it was the week after the workshop. Everyone left on that afternoon to go straight to Zcon. They all,
and what they got was a city that has a huge history and beautiful beaches, and the conference itself was filled with just amazing content and smart, inclusive people, like really, really nice community.
Yeah, no, it's great. I've heard it's really, really good. Do you see I mean, in terms of the number of people like writing zero knowledge protocols, is that increasing, or is it still quite?
Yeah, definitely. There's a more and more schemes. So just mathematical schemes that are being found and perfected. So you have different ways to do zero knowledge that stem from different mathematical objects that were used to produce the core effect of proving without showing the witness data. And there's the community is between researchers and people that advance the space of cryptography or zero knowledge proof in that area, and applied engineers that take those concepts and make libraries and more advanced tools and end-to-end protocols that use those tools. So you have a whole span of activity.
Yeah, so it's no longer kind of a niche. 20 people in the world able to write them. It's gone up to.
But that's one of the other communities that actually we built with the Zcash Foundation. It's called zkproof.org.
Okay.
So that's we call it the standardization effort or standardization workshop. So basically, it's all the leading professors joining forces and doing sort of a sync, an overview of what's the status of zero knowledge in the world right now. And that the last conference, even though it was not so cheap, that was 150 people in Berkeley working on the details of this space.
Yeah, it's amazing how what kind of background are they coming from? Because I guess it's still a relatively new discipline. Are they all coming from mathematical backgrounds? Are they coming from coding backgrounds? Are they? I think I can't remember his name from Zcash. Scott? No. Sean. Yeah, that's it. He doesn't seem to have any kind of. He doesn't have any mathematical background or anything.
Yeah, but he's a fucking genius. Sean wrote a lot of what's running right now. The sapling protocol. So no, the type of people that would go to that conference are people that are curious enough to dive very, very deep into the deepest levels of math, and then feel comfortable enough to stop at some point to say, okay, that kind of math I'm going to just accept, but from here on, I'm good. I have enough tools to understand how it works. So they stop at some point, but they build on their knowledge and on their peers' knowledge until they get to a place where they feel productive, where they can produce tools or protocols or applications. So in our case, the space we dive all of these layers, but the place where we feel productive is putting this in the hands of enterprise companies and standardizing the space, making sure that there's interoperability between the different zero knowledge proof schemes and and that one developer can use the library of another developer. So that there's a whole community around zero knowledge that can have engineering tools.
Yeah, that's it. It's just, it seems to be that the community is so like tight and inclusive and collaborative that really, like, it's impressive to watch compared to some other like areas of technology where it's a bit more disparate and people are working to get against each other. Like, why do you think that is? Like, how do you think that's?
I think it's because the underlying challenge of understanding the tech, once you've gone through the learning curve of figuring out some of the math and some of the end-to-end protocols for the Zcash sampling protocol is quite a feat of engineering.
Yeah.
It's itself based on zero cash or zero coin, but it's really impressive the work that was done. So you feel that the community is not fighting each other; it's actually fighting this mountain of things that need to be understood and yet developed to achieve the next level. It's like a scientific endeavor.
Yeah. And how does that? I mean, how does that translate to like enterprises where maybe they're not, like, you've got something so complex and scientific on one side, and you've got enterprises who maybe they understand the problem, but the solution is so advanced. How do you communicate it to them? How hard is it?
That's one of the biggest problems. It's they have nobody. Usually, they have nobody in their team that understands the technology, or even has any chance of having the tools to understand the technology. And when you ask, in a room full of people that come roughly from the space of blockchain or some that read the zero knowledge papers, if they read enough, they know that they don't know enough.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit there's tricky parts. If you ask, do you know everything about it? No, I don't. It's difficult. So in that context, selling a product is quite complex, because you need to make sure that they have a process to rely on your technology. And what we offer to them is, okay, this process is going to be a scientific community vetting first the math, and then the libraries, and then the protocols, and having end-to-end proofs, mathematical proofs, or just rigorous proofs that the protocols give what they say they give. So very detailed specs. There's a lot of tools that we put into place to make it possible for them to have a process of trust. And the entire zkproof.org effort is this trust ecosystem where you have professors and engineers and commercial companies that try to move from mathematical proofs to tools that are more practical, to actual protocols that you can package and sell.
You're not just selling a product; you're selling an entire ecosystem, essentially.
Yes.
I mean, I guess trust is such a complicated thing that you need that whole ecosystem to.
Yes.
Like, how much sort of potential do you think it's got to completely? I mean, like, so many different industries rely on trust, and automating it makes it sound a bit under complex. I suppose it's a bit of a simplistic.
So when you think about it, when an industry relies on trust, when you say that it relies on trust, what you basically mean is that they don't have a mean to verify that the other party is not going to screw them, so they're going to resort to trusting the other party.
Yeah.
Trust is a sort of fail-safe when you don't have another way. Like, what are you going to do? You need to do business. So, well, I'm going to trust the other side because otherwise I don't do business. This is a new point where you can reduce your risk, because you don't need to trust, because you're actually getting proof that everything's legit. So you verify everything, and there's no trust needed in the collaboration. So it's much smoother. You can have instead of setting up trust relationship between parties so that they can embark in a collaboration, they can just start collaborating because the tools are there. So it's a pretty fundamental shift.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're climbing and you fall, then you have to trust the person to catch you if you don't have a harness because he's there. But if you have a harness, then you just don't have to trust that person. It's all kind of
so right. Or let's say that it's a lot on risk, risk management. So if I'm doing asset transfer without risk management, well, I'll tell you that I'll send you the money, but maybe you'll get it, maybe not. And if I'm a fraudster, I did a double spend, and then you'll discover it later on. Here, I'm going to send you a proof that I never sent it to anyone else, and that I own the asset to begin with, and that once you have this asset, you'll be able to prove these things further to other people. If I manage to give you that proof, you don't need to know who I am. Now you hold an asset that everybody will recognize as yours.
Yeah.
So it disintermediates me, like as the party that you deal with. Actually, this is one of the coolest features about sapling protocol and the protocol that we use. You can receive an asset without even knowing who sent it to you.
Yeah.
which is weird, right?
Yeah, no.
Usually it's not the case. We had to add back a feature of sender ID so that you can opt in to saying, hey, that's me that just sent you this asset.
That's amazing. Yeah. Do you think that, what kind of consequences does that, other opportunities does that open up for companies? Because I guess if you don't have to worry about that, if you err, you can take more risks in other ways. You can take different kinds of risks, and you can grow your company in different ways that maybe you hadn't thought of, because you're not worrying about, I'm trusting them, I need to trust them.
Yeah. It makes the concept of risk more liquid. So you have markets of risk basically that will flow from one place to another, and you won't have this rigidity that you had in 2008, where risk was flowing around, but it was so opaque and nothing was proven. It was based on rotten foundations. So the whole system exploded when mortgages started falling.
Yeah.
Here you would be moving assets with their fundamentals backing them, without having to know who's actually what the source of the risk is, but you will have enough tools to measure and manage how much risk you want to take.
Yeah. What's the future for qedit? What's your next kind of moves and plans? If you can share them.
Build trust ecosystems, right? So that the workshop that was there in London is part of that. It's make sure that people can and start playing with them. One of the things that we're pushing is called ZK interface, which is a way, like I said, to be able to import libraries from other libraries, choose which language you want to express your knowledge, and then in the backend it will run on any of the current implementations. So there's Bellman, there's Dalek Bulletproof. You can write, for example, a Socrates proof and run it on Dalek Bulletproof, and it will have the same intermediate representation. Wow. So it's kind of a technical tool to start standardizing.
Okay, and standardizing is kind of is that the next obstacle to overcome, maybe, in terms of ensuring this being widespread?
I think so. So it's building the interoperability tools, making sure that you don't lose security in the process. so coming back to proving the specs of any protocol that goes out. There's gonna be that we're bound to have bugs in the system. So it has to be. We need to build also a trust in our own processes that there's enough peer review and enough goodwill so that when there's a bug, people will come and look at it in the right way. So Ariel Gabizon famously found a bug in Sprout, the first Zcash implementation in the trusted setup phase, and he did that while he was proving or attempting to prove the security of Sprout.
Okay.
So he was going over the implementation and the spec and trying to show that it's end-to-end secure. But when he reached that point, it wasn't secure. So the processes as we make them better, we'll have more certainty, and the community should be open to the idea that it's a common project.
Okay. Oh, that's brilliant. I think that's got everything. Fantastic. Oh, I just